I started back in 1964, right out of high school. And when I first came down here, it was a very, I'm going to say, then what they call awesome. 15 degrees below zero, wind chill down through here, would blow down through here, it'd be like 30, 40 below. And the cars would be packed with snow, then the ore would be put on them, then some more snow, and it would freeze. And then when the car would come here in the middle of winter time, you had a 90-ton ice cube. When you look down here, it looks like a dungeon. It felt like a dungeon, and it was a dungeon. It was cold, water running all the time. It was dirty and filthy. And every time I would end up going down there working as a laborer or a Larry helper, I wish I could have went home that night. That's how bad the job was. You'd come out here with the hot blast man when it was time to change the stoves. And everything on the stoves down at 6 and 7 had to be done manually. They did have charts and gauges on the inside that would record the temperature and the pressure on the furnace or on the stoves. But when you came back to change the stove, all of these valves were pulled by hand. And you can see over here, all your valves were pulled by hand. Sometimes, well, they're probably frozen now, but 2 people would have to pull these valves down to shut them. And you had a sequence that you had to go through, and you'd have to close the furnace or the stove with a seal, and then on the next one you'd put a donut back in, pull everything up tight, and then a gas and hot air would start to come through to heat the brick on the inside of the stoves here. But I've had the opportunity of working with the bricklayers when we had to jackhammer everything from the top down, take it out and then re-brick them. Okay, it was very noisy in here. It was hot in the summer. I mean, because everything, your stoves were hot, the sides were hot. Not hot enough that you couldn't go up there and touch them, but just the heat radiating off of them, it was warm. You'd have a arm like this, which would actually pull it up tight and seal it shut. And you had to do that every time you changed stoves on the furnace. Everything was kept clean. There was nothing. The whole place looked like this. There was no dirt or anything around here. You had to clean them up. Yes, I was overwhelmed by the size of everything and the operation of it. But once you get used to it, it was nothing. You just walked around through it. Well, you had to have a partner through here because this area contained a lot of gas. And you needed 2 people at a time to come in here for changing valves and everything. And it was a safety precaution where if you felt faint, you got out. If your buddy went down, you still went out. You didn't help him because you may not get out.
The most amazing thing happens here at the widest part. This is called the Bosch, and that's around where that bustle pipe is coming. This is where the hot air is being forced in, and it's beginning the chemical reaction with the raw materials. And if you could peek into that blast furnace, as the guys that worked here would have to do occasionally, you would see suspended in mid-air tons of raw material held up by the force of that air, and dripping out of that raw materials would be raining molten iron that would then collect in a liquid form in the hearth. When
they were ready to tap a furnace, they had a siren go off and the red lights would come on. They had them on each entranceway, and if you didn't belong in a cast house, you had to leave. Now these runners here, they're all empty. They used to be lined with a sand, dirt type material that when the iron would come down them, you would have a dam here and a gate, like on it behind this gate. You'd have your coke dust and your sand, and this runner here, the molten iron would back up and go down the runner into a ladle. The temperature coming out is roughly around 2,600 degrees to 2,800 degrees, and you're standing right here working on it and knocking your pockets out. You had safety equipment. You had asbestos gloves that you had to wear. You had a jacket made out of roughly the same material that, and the thickness that you had. And when you put this on, you had your safety glasses, then you had goggles that went over top, and then you put your hood on with your asbestos suit and everything, which would keep the heat away, but it still got very hot. I've worked already where these shields here have actually buckled while you were working from the heat. A few guys may have wore these, but a lot of guys would even take old tires and cut tires out and hammer them onto the bottom of their shoes to give them extra protection from the heat of being in a runner. To tell you a little bit about the men that worked here in the furnaces, everybody got along with each other. If you were new, they let you learn the hard way by a few mistakes, but they watched you. But some of the old timers would be smoking cigars, and they have the old stubs in their mouth, and the furnaces would be running, and they're getting ready to knock this pocket out right here. You think they take the cigar out? No, they just let it burn, put their hood on, and go in here and knock the pocket out. When they took it off, there would be smoke all over the place. And it seemed to never bother them. They'd bring the drill around and they'd line it up into the hole, and they would start drilling it. And when he tapped all the way through, the pressure on the furnace would actually blow sparks all the way to the end of the cast house. The molten iron would come out, being heavier, it'd stay at the bottom. It would start running down the runners. As it started building up and the slag came out, that skimmer would catch the slag and send it down this runner over here. If you had a cold cast, and the iron would run like molasses or honey, or it would run down a runner, build up, sometimes actually stop. Then the keeper would have to go up there with all that molten material in here, and he'd stand over there and he'd push it down in that hole, and he'd pick that hole out. He'd shove that rod down in there until he got it opened up again for the material to start flowing. And you had to watch yourself because everything was dangerous. I mean, you had your hood and your gloves and your helmets, and everything would be fogged up and steamed on you. You weren't allowed to cross over the runners because if you would slip or miss, you're gone. When you're in a cast house and you look down into this ladle when they're spotting it, you almost have to put the hood over your head to look down there because the heat coming out is so hot that it'll actually burn you.